Great.
So peace to all you viewers. This is the Alkalize to Realize talk show, and today I have my brother Adam, and ultimately we are gonna build upon, I want to say, astrotheology, but yeah, and things of that nature. So yeah, bro. I guess you can start off by simply introducing yourself and what your interests are, and what led you to become interested in those things, if you get what I'm saying. Yeah, I guess we can start
Yeah,
there.
absolutely. Great. Yeah, I guess even as a child, I would always and often question things. Like I would see something presented to me in class, and I didn't accept it formally,
Right.
and there wasn't anything inside me as a fire that led me to accept any of this. I'd rather challenge it, not to be a challenger, but to live within my faculty to know when something sounds right and when something doesn't, not just accepting the nature of all truth. So yeah, ever since a young age, I just found nothing but flaws in the education system that I later found out in my later years was designed to take me out of my own self. So yeah, that really set me up on a path of wanting to, how would I say it? That really set me up on a path of wanting to just explore all the things, all the truths. So yeah, I'd say that I've always been definitely a delver of the truth, ultimate truth, not just here's your truth.com information or your
Right.
news.com or like the amount of people that I've met, or not even that I've met, that I generally know that once NASA makes an announcement, that's the be all and end all. Do you have a satellite monitoring the sun? Sorry, brother, I have to trust NASA. And it's like, well, hang on. Where did this NASA come from? We're talking about astrology. Let's talk about astronomy. So yeah, no one's intrigued as much to talk about astrology, but they're all about astronomy. And this is coming from an organization that, like if we look at the phonetic breakdown of the word, NASA in Hebrew means deception or to deceive. So it depends. It really doesn't depend on how you view language. If you know the code matrix and you know who created all the languages and what the secrets are embedded within those languages, which is all spiritual context, they're all by word designed to trigger certain things in the mind as a vibration when we hear the vibration of the sound.
Right.
And
Yeah.
this is what all the astrologers knew. They knew the effects of the vibration of the planets upon our 7 chakras, 7 planets, 7 days of the week, 7 chakras, 7 harmonies in music. It all comes down to that number of 7. And yeah, I wanted to know more. I wanted to know, why are all of the priests of Rome talking about this information fluently behind closed doors, stolen from we the people hundreds of years ago, but no one's talking about it like it is a gold. And it is a gold. It is a divine gold that when you find out this information, your life will never be the same. It will never be the same trip. It will change absolutely everything you see, and you'll never unsee it. And the more you know, the better you can grow, and the more you can grow. And I'm a big believer of that too, in taking people on that path to find themselves in an empire that has established a control system so that we find it really hard to control our own selves.
Right. Exactly. I feel you on that. Like, definitely it is like that. Like, once you learn something, it changes you, and it's like you can't unlearn it. And it's so funny because last night I was trying to explain to my dad this, because he was talking about how I'm like getting into all these things that are like beyond my age, I guess you can say. But I was just like, trying to get him to understand that it's like once you learn something, there is no unlearning it. It's just, you kind of learn something once you learn it. Like once you see something, it's gonna scar you for life. I
Yeah,
guess you could say.
the truth. Yeah. Yeah, the truth is a beautiful and horrific thing if you're looking at it on a dualistic platform, but it is what it is, and the truth is never changeable. It will always be the truth, brother. It will always be the truth. Once you grow a seed, you know what's going to come out of that seed. It's just about watering it, and no one can come along and say, do you know this carrot seed is actually a potato? Like I know, like the rhythm of the universe is recorded, and the truth will always be the truth.
Right,
So,
exactly.
but yeah, I think that particularly knowing the path that you've taken solely,
Mm-hmm.
it's absolutely beautiful to see people of our age groups taking heed to build that inner fire, to find their inner temple of themselves. And yeah, I think that it's never too early, it's never too late to escape to your fate. I always say, like, this is our fate, this is our destiny, this is the world that we were brought into to bear witness to the divine. But everyone's kind of, you know, got a belly full of cheese and a belly full of bread and many things that aren't allowing the high processes of thought functionality, and they sit
Right.
down and wonder why they're depressed and why they can't process information. And how many people have you met that say, how do you know the difference between right and wrong? It's like, the more clean you are, the more clarity you will have. Like Hippocrates said, let the food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. It is a medicine.
Mm-hmm.
How you use it is up to you.
Definitely. You know, it's no coincidence that, for one, there are no hospitals in nature, and for two, all of the animals, you know, they prosper and they don't experience sickness unless we humans tamper with them, you know. That is so true. Your food is your medicine, and sometimes, you know, fasting, just not eating nothing at all. Because, you know, at the end of the day, it's not particularly the food that heals you, it's always the body that heals the body, you know. Like when you cut yourself and, you know, it heals, like your body is that intelligent, you know, like we have, you know, our body has its own intelligence. So it's like, if we were to get out the way of our body and just let it do what it do, we can heal anything, you know. But that's the thing.
Absolutely.
We tend to get in our way, you know, like we're the ones who are always in the way of ourselves, and this is like at all levels. Yeah, definitely.
Yes, I do often meet people, as with what you've just said there, I do often meet people that will say, oh, self-healing, I'm not into that. I leave it up to my doctor. But I always say to these types of people, I say, like, what would happen if you cut yourself right now?
Mm-hmm.
What would be the cause and effect of that? And they sort of go into their mind, and I just take them straight to the point that you are self-healing. It's about, how is it healing? It's already got all of the information. The body knows exactly what needs to take place on a universal level to heal that issue. And it's the same with emotional pains as well. Emotional pains, they're all healable, everything. And that's the one thing that the pharmaceutical industry does not want people to know, is that we are the doctors of our own world. Just like the father of Western medicine said, he who is not his own doctor is a fool. So he's not,
Right.
I don't think that comes down to perspective. I think that comes down to, was he telling the truth, or was he a bit mad? I guess we're all a bit mad in some ways, but this is not the type of madness that I'm referring to. That is, something that it's a great thing, man. Like, he gave the whole platform of Western conventional medicine, just
Mm-hmm.
what we have today is the large field of it all, connected to all of the studies through the universities. And yeah, they really don't want us to know thyself. They don't want us to be an anatomist. They don't want us to understand atoms within us. They don't want us to understand much about what it does take to become a high enlightened thinker. And that is, that's the
Right.
most valuable thing that you can have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly, exactly. You know, it's funny and ironic to me because, you know, even doctors have doctors. Yeah, we go to doctors asking for help when even these doctors, they have doctors, you know. Like, I feel like what this indicates is simply like they're not really at a place to heal others, because you're right, it's like, if you can't heal yourself, then you shouldn't particularly try going on to heal another person. And it's the same thing, you know, like everything is fractal, everything is you know, reflective. It's, you know, like how they say, like, you can't, if you don't love yourself, you can't love another. I feel like to a degree it's all the same thing. Confederalism. Well, and then, you know, not to mention that most of these doctors are like ultimately just doing it for the money. You know, it's like they're more looking after their bank account than anything. And then, you know, that also takes me to the fact that the medical industry in of itself, and, you know, the pharmaceutical industry, they're not particularly focusing on curing us, but more treating us. They're more focused on treatments because, you know, it's like they want, that's how they make the money. And it's like, if they treat someone, that's another customer they have lost. So it's intentional that the medicine that we heal off of has multiple side effects, you know, to the point where it's like the negatives outdo the positive, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you start looking up the, I'm not sure where you are at etymologically, but if you start looking at like all the pharmaceutical ingredients, or like the name of the actual medicine itself, if you start looking at each individual syllable and find the word root of each syllable to make up a sentence, it's pretty scary, man. Like, they tell you through the name of drugs in the pharmaceutical industry that this will destroy you. And yeah, it's on all platforms. They tell us the truth absolutely in all walks of life, just through the secrets of language, which is, you know, it's quite an easy thing to understand when you take that path up. But yeah, I do find it interesting that, you know, like, doctors, they generally do it for the money, and it's one of the highest paying jobs in suburbia. However, I do think that, like, you know, good cop, bad cop, I do think that I would like to say a majority of the doctors do have that natural born intention to understand the body, as we all naturally would. So I do think that there are people that naturally are inclined to want to study medicine, but it's as to their morality. What is their intention in this field? Is it for the purpose of good for humanity, or is it for the purpose to peddle for the Pope and to serve the pharmaceutical industry and keep making the Medici family rich and listen to everything they tell us on the media, which is owned by the same family? And yeah, do we really need, or are we really truly required to buy the lie if there is a better life on the other side? And I don't think we do. And yeah, like, I find it interesting as well, like the debate between the subject of natural medicine or Western medicine. So it's like alternative, altering the native state of the natural medicine, or go for the Western version. And yeah, I find it quite strange that people actually believe that it's like the debate of science versus light. Like, sound is going to travel at a lower oscillation, but light is going to travel at a faster pace. So you're going to see one before the other, but they're not different. They're actually the same thing. Just like the natural medicine is unaltered, but then we've got the adulterated version, which is synthesized. So, for example, like the ephedrine plant, super beneficial in many ways, but they've synthesized it into a pseudoephedrine. So you don't just go to the plant. They've got all of the harmonics synthesized in lab, and then they're changing it to a point where you're not getting a divine intervention as you naturally would. You're not getting the messages that were working through that shamanic plant as it is. So now you've just got all these kids taking Sudafeds and hitting the dance floor, and they fall to the ground because they don't know what they're doing. They don't understand the receptors of the brain. They don't understand the chakras of the body. They don't understand how the blood flows. They don't understand what the body is, and they're really paying for it later on in their life. And I think it's not necessary. I think that as long as we acknowledge that pharmacy is here to make us sick and to cause us harm, we'll be okay. It's just a matter of selecting the right or wrong choice. And yeah.
Yeah, right. And, you know, I also feel like, because a lot of people side with, I want to say, like, you know, the bigger opinion in a sense, I want to say, but I do want to make it clear that, you know, it's like the winner always writes history, you know, so it's like, you can't particularly always look at history and think that what we are being told is correct, because, you know, like I said, the winner always, you know, writes history. And it's like, I feel like we've gone through this and that, and I don't particularly think that, because, you know, I'm aware, if I'm to talk, you know, religiously, that there has been more bloodshed than combine. There has been more bloodshed in Christianity than if we were to combine, you know, all of the other wars. And I feel like because of this, in a sense, Christianity arose victorious, and they were the ones who had control of the knowledge that we, the masses, were able to tap into, you know. So in a sense, it's like, you know, and then not to mention us going through the age of Pisces, and then there was a shit ton of fucking deception and everything. So I feel like it is really true that, in a sense, you can't really believe what you see for what you see, because, you know, things are deeper than that nowadays, because there's so much deception.
So
And I
much
feel like
matter.
so much massa.
Yes, brother. There's
So much
so much
massa.
deception. There's so much deception, but I always say to people, like, it's just a fence. You just got to go over it, or you can kick the paling through and walk straight through it if you desire. Like, there's nothing that holds us back. Deception being one of the things that will never hold me back, and it never has. And it's funny when you say, like, you know, the winner
Writes
is the
his
writer.
story.
Yeah. So it's funny how it's history, like his story, but the opposite of that would be her story, which is nature's story. So
Right.
there's a word in Aboriginal Australia, Indigenous Australian word called dadiri, and this word, if you look it up, DADIRRI, it means to sit silently in nature in order to understand the secrets of the universe. That's pretty technical for a culture that we said had no knowledge whatsoever. They always downplay the wisdom of the elders so they can introduce the pharmaceutical industry after they kill the medicine man. But yeah, I feel that we definitely need to stop going for his story, because it is not an authentic narrative. We need to go for her story, which is authentic. She is the author of herself, and she's writing everything around us right now. And yeah, brother, I fully believe that.
Right.
And
You know, and I really do feel like the true war or duality indeed is like the organic versus the inorganic world, you know, like the artificial world versus the unartificial world, in a sense.
yeah,
And yeah.
it's an art. Everything artificial is an art, and it's being used by the black nobility scholars as a weapon against us. And it doesn't have to be. Like, if you don't look left and right before you cross the road and a car hits you, it was like almost meant to happen. Why didn't you look left and right? If you don't look at the, you know, the two versions at the same time, you're only going to understand one universal language, you know, one sentence. You're only going to understand that. And yeah, that's the problem with university as well, is it really instills that all of what we're learning is authentic, and it's stamped by the Pope. It's stamped by the scientists. I went into a crystal shop the other day, brother. I went into a crystal shop the other day with one of my friends, and yeah, I had a bit of an interesting conversation with this girl. She didn't seem to know too much about metaphysics or rocks, let's call them. And in the cabinet, I saw there was some moon dust. And I was like, is this fucking shit for real? Like, they're going to try and tell me that I can buy this little speckled of a moon dust for $50. So I said to her, I said, is this, like, no, I don't believe this. But I said, is this real moon dust? She goes, yeah, this is real moon dust. I said, who certifies it as genuine moon dust? And she said, she got really defensive, actually. Yeah, and she said, it's certified by a scientist, and I know that for a fact. And in my mind, I'm like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. I was like, all right, well, you have a lovely day. And yeah, sitting right next to it was some Mars dust. The Mars dust was a little bit more expensive. I think that was like $75. So, you know, man, like it must take a lot more tongs and tweezers scalpeling the dirt of Mars to bring that back. You know, like must be more expensive to. It's just desert stones, man. Desert sand. It's all bullshit. Yeah, it's yeah,
It's all NASA, bro.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that I know, like, I know, talking about like medicine, I know people who are doctors. I've got really close friends who are Western accredited doctors. They've all sat the GAMSAT and they're all being fully qualified. And it's funny, the path that a lot of them are taking now is like they've got their medical science certification, but they acknowledge the field as not an authentic, holistic approach to our vessel, which is divine. And they're acknowledging the death amounts being recorded in the pharmaceutical industry. Talk about, you know, like religions being the cause of all the wars, but it's speaking in today's terms, I see that the largest cause of death on the planet right now is food and drugs, and legally prescribed, non-legally prescribed. I find it's interesting that the organization that writes all the regulations on food and drugs is the FDA, and that's the Food and Drug Administration. Why are they calling it an administration when I know you administer drugs, but I also know that they administer drugs through the food? That's the catch. And but what's the point of it all? What do they want us to? Do they want us to live 120, 100, or do they want us to live for the age that has been recorded as a good servant years? You know, like, yeah, it's all bullshit, man. Everything university pushes is all bullshit. And you look at all the logos of all the universities, they're all papal. They're all Roman canonists, Roman canon system of tertiary. And yeah, I don't accept that. I don't accept that the organization on the planet that tells us what is true and what isn't is stamped by the Pope. I don't agree with that. I don't agree that people don't go into the inner world to find knowledge to bring out to the outer world. We are walking vessels of knowledge, and there is a realm to access that knowledge from our aura to the aurora, connecting soul to soul. This is where all the information is stored. Call it the Akashic records, call it dream time, call it DMT, call it whatever you want. There's a way to connect to it, and it's through transcendentalism. You don't have to take substance. People have been doing it for thousands of years, connecting to the divine to get all the information. And yeah, even the word aura will tell us the truth. It's AU, symbol of gold, and Ra, which is the sun. And in ancient alchemy, the governing aspect of gold was the sun. And in Egypt, in Kemet, they even called Ra the golden radiance of Ra, the golden Ra. They always referred to the sun as gold and the moon as silver. So it's funny that aura is literally gold sun, and that's our soul. That is sol, the sun, if you like. And then you've got you know, like magnetic aspects to that. And this is how we send information through telecommunications and antenna radio. And you know, like our pineal body sits in a crystal pocket. It's in crystalline calcium. And for me, it reminds me of a wireless radio, because I don't know if you would remember, might have been a little bit just before your time, but we had the wireless radios like 50 years ago. People would be sitting in the lounge room around a plastic box with all the wiring all set out, with the center being a quartz crystal, and you're sending a transmission from that quartz over the other side of the plane or the planet, and you're connecting and sending information back and forth to each other. But then you've got people who say, You think there's something happening up here? There's definitely something happening up here. The word Kabbalah means reception. This is the tree of life. We are the tree of life. And there is an external tree, which is why we call it the tree of knowledge. It's an alive existence that we're in. And how many times have you sat there and had a thought that comes to you and you're like, where did that even come from me? You know, like where do these thoughts come from a lot of the time?
Right. Yeah.
It's a question to ask.
Yeah, I guess, for me, it's evident, and I really do feel like, due to my vastness of knowledge, and I guess you can say the amount of time I've been in this lifetime on this earth, like, to me, the only explanation is that I receive, most of my knowledge from, I guess, source, or my higher self, or whatever you want to say. And, it's pretty dope because I can, meditate and actually ask questions and receive insight, and it's like, yeah, I think that's something that's pretty cool. But it's said that ultimately, in order for us to tap into our higher self, source, the Akashic records, or whatever you want to call it, we first must quiet the mind, to hear the silent whispers of the soul. And I feel like this is very true. And, it's interesting for me because I was studying esoteric astrology, and then when I came to Gemini, I forgot the word they used, but it was this big word, but ultimately it meant like, we Geminis tend to have the easiest connection to, I guess you can say, source, but the controversy is that you can't connect to source if you have a chatty mind, and Geminis are known to constantly think, So I think I am very blessed that I am a Gemini, and I meditate and things of that nature, and I can tap into source. And, I feel like that's the only explanation. So it's like, sometimes when people ask me, like, how do you know all of this stuff? It's like the only answer I can give them is, well, I just know it, it's like intuitive, but it's like, sometimes that's not relevant. But it's so true. And, I'm a strong believer that, like, the greatest guru or master you can follow, no one really follows, because, that's us. We are the greatest guru we can follow. So, like, to follow your intuition and things of this nature is like the greatest thing you can do for yourself. Most of us in this day and age don't really tend to do that,
Absolutely, yes, definitely. Yeah, I think that, yeah, every Gemini I know, and it's funny because I didn't consider this before I started looking at people's charts. Like, I went through heaps of relationships, from friendships, never looking at people's charts. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I won't even get into a relationship with a woman unless I know her chart. I need to know that. I'm not going to waste their time. Not even my time. It's just, I'm not going to waste their time. So then when I see the little lines running across the angles from the start of the sun's ecliptic, you can really see, like for me personally, I fall into the first 6 houses. I don't cross into the next 6. So I find it really hard actually to get along with the other amount of houses sometimes. But everyone who rolls around in my house, I generally get along with. But when you meet people who cross into all houses, you can just see that they, as a simple observation of astrology, you already know just by looking at their chart that they're going to get along with all the houses of the zodiac. But yeah, one thing I've noted, something's wrong with your speaker, bro.
Hold on. Give me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I guess you can just continue as to what you were saying earlier about the 6 houses and how you don't go farther than the 6 houses. But
yeah, like all of my angularizations are in the first 6 houses. So I always thought it was really interesting when I was a kid, because I wasn't looking at charts or anything at that point in my life. Right. I always thought it was interesting that there was like a general consensus of people that I would generally clash with. And I guess that always comes with being a out of the box thinker, but I'd rather that than to be trapped in a box as a thinker.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's really interesting to go back and observe now that there's nothing that is not a utensil of divining with astrology. Like, there's nothing that you can't find through the rhythm and patterns or recording of those rhythms, patterns in the universe, which is astrology. And yeah, I meet a lot of people that they might have just started reading a book about it, or they've never really been into it. But I've seen people that say, I'm not really into astrology, and then I've just sort of like given them a little bit of extra things here and there, and they really connected to the fact that
It's relevant. Yeah,
it's all relevant, but why was the version of astrology that all of the ancient people knew as the same story, why has it been backflipped today, only in the last hundreds of years? Why have we been given not a platform of sciences with non-truths, but a whole platform of non-truth sciences that are intensified to keep us in the deep well? And yeah, I think that astrology is the one thing for me that gave me surety that we are divine, and I see the churches all taking us away from that.
right.
They don't want us to know that. They don't want us to know that through our own path, we are going to the stars. We are of the stars. We were born from the stars. We will go back to the stars. The church will say to you, even the story of Christ, he said, the only way to eternal salvation is through my way. But then the church came out and flipped that to say, no, the only way to eternal salvation is if you come to church on Sunday, the day of the sun. We're going to keep the roof over your head so that you don't get any sunlight, the real God. And then they give their sermon, which is Sedamon there, which is circle moon. It's like, they'll tell you. And yeah, it's funny how in Catholicism, when the priest is giving their sermon, they're standing underneath a wooden embellishment in the roof, and they call it, in the cathedral science, they call it the hex. And a hex is what you cast, it's casting spells on people. So it's funny how they're standing there using all of their sciences, and people, as the Goyam, aren't aware that they are being practiced against, and they're having things put into them and things taken out of them non-consensually, and they're allowing this to happen because they don't understand the non-visible metaphysical properties of the inner world of the being. But yeah, I just wanted to say one thing as well. Like, we're talking about the aura and the aurora. Isn't it funny how they give us words in a different way, so we never find the deep solid connection with them? So like, for us, we're namedly characterizing it as aura. But if you go to the earth science, they call it the aurora. They always like to change words a little bit so that we can't connect the truth straight away. And yeah, like even the word language, it's the closest word that you'll find to it in English dialect is languish, which means to become weakened in. So if you language in language, you've become weakened in language. But it's funny that they've got that word so similar to language, because they have the astrologers, the magicians, they have lowered us from that. Right. They've taken our strength from our language. Because even in your continent, brother, where your roots come from in Africa, but in all the countries of the world, no science was written. Even in the cathedrals, they were not putting writing on the walls. It was all by the spoken tongue. That's where all the divine science comes from. And yeah, even like, we use the word hieroglyphs today, but that's not the language that these Kemites of Egypt spoke. They called it the Medu Neter, and that's what the name of their language was. It was Medu Neter. Sounds like Mother Nature, right?
Right. Yeah.
But it's funny how when you break down the etymology of what Medu Neter means in Kemetic language, it's divine, sacred language. So that's the name of their language. The name of the Egyptian ancient language was divine, sacred language. So my only question would be, a language, I understand that. Sacred, okay, let's investigate that. Divine, what makes something so divine is that in their language, they learned the mineral domain, the plant domain, the animal domain, the cosmos domain, and the human domain, but they had the one spirit running through all of it, which they called Atum, and that is the all. And then you go to Christian theology, and they say since the beginning, there was Adam. Similar phonetics, but then you say Adam backwards, and it's matter, and all atoms are
metaphysical.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's funny how we stole that language from them. But have you ever heard that saying, brother? You can take a man out of Africa, but you can't take Africa out of a man. Because the divine language stays in the heart of man. Because memory is cognitive in the blood, and the blood is flowing through the heart. It's the main veil that passes through the blood. So of course you're going to have all that memory from all the blood cells, like battery cells. There's cells that store information.
Right.
Forever.
Water in of itself is memory. Like that's what water is, memory. And on top of that, the DNA we hold. And science, I'm not sure. I think it's like they say we are only utilizing like 3%. And then I think like they try to state that 97% of it is waste or junk DNA, but the truth is it's not junk DNA. This is in a sense, I guess you can say, where all of our knowledge is stored, because like you said, it was in a sense passed down to us by knowledge. That used to be passed down, by word, but I feel like it was also to a degree like hereditary, I want to say.
That's what's downloaded into the pineal gland in the womb. It's funny how in the Western field of endocrinology, you go to Egypt, it's some Shimra. You go to India, it's the chakra. If you go to the Western version, it's non-spiritual, but they call it endocrinology. That was founded in like 1903. So it's a very baby science when we've already got the whole field of knowledge of that subject fully known. There's nothing that's not known about it.
Right. Yeah.
Where was I going? I was just saying that, it's funny how like when we're born, we are the first organ that forms in the body is the pineal body, the gland of the pineal. So
I thought it was the heart.
I was told otherwise, but it's funny because if you look up if you look up the word heart, the etymology of the word heart tells us what it is. It's the etymology of the word heart doesn't hold a reference at all to a flowing pulse or a liquid. It means center of whatever you're referencing it. If you say the heart of Africa, it's the center of, or earth as an anagram of the word heart. All the ancient people knew that earth was this spiritual center of the universe, the nucleus, with the proton and electron going around it, sun and moon. As above, so below. You'll see the same thing through a microscope as to the macrocosm. But yeah, like, so I when I was probably even your age, brother, I was like, hang on, so that means that the heart is this technically, but this is the middle chakra, so it's the middle chakra of the body. So I think it can work both ways, but my understanding was that the pineal gland is the first eye that forms in the body, and so we're calling it the third eye when actually it's the first eye that forms. And So why is this atrophied eye with a retina, like to see out of? Why do we have this behind our temple? And why is it active in the womb? Upon knowing that there is a science of upload, download. When we sleep, we go and upload information that we've witnessed. And while we're sleeping, we're downloading the divine messages, which call it dreaming. They're all future divining tools. There's nothing about dreams that aren't very spiritual. Dreams are very important, and I don't take my dreams lightly at all.
The dreams, I like to say, are like, you know, there are conscious mind exploring the subconscious mind. And, you know, I also feel like we are like 5% conscious and then 95% subconscious. And, you know, it's insane because, like, this is what advertisers target. It's what, you know, this is why there's a lot of symbols and things of that nature, because to a degree, our subconscious mind doesn't particularly really speak English. It more speaks like in symbols, you know, like a circle can mean one thing to us, but a circle means like so many things to the subconscious mind, you know. But on top of that, our subconscious mind also tries to communicate with us through emotions and things of that nature. But, you know, I was also going to say, because I find it very interesting, because these eyes right here, they're not particularly they're not perceptors. I want to say they're more projectors, you know, because I'm aware that, like, our eyes, they receive electrical signals, and then our eyes, that's the only responsibility to receive this electrical signal, and then they send it to the brain, and then the brain deciphers this electrical signal, and then the brain, I would assume, like you said earlier, maybe through the pineal gland, it you know, it sends out into the reality, and you know, this is what we perceive. And, you know, I say that to say this, like, I really do feel like everyone is living through their experiences, for one, but also through what we know. You know, like, for instance, because, you know, once you understand knowledge, it frees you to a lot of things, you know. Like, for instance, if you knew one thing about this thing, and then later on you know 5 things about this thing, you see it through a different light, right? Um,
Always through a new scope. Like reading a book the second time and thinking, was this chapter in the book the first time I read it? Like, I've read books multiple times and I'm feeling like I haven't even read this part I just got to. Like, did I miss that? Or, but yeah, there's always something undiscovered that when you go back to it, you will see it in a different light. Absolutely. And yeah, it's interesting. Like what you were saying about the eyes not being receivers as much, but also projectors, so they're transmitting as well as receiving. And I think that's a really great observation to note, because I think that I can, like, people can see me, so that's their receiving that you're talking about. But
right.
what I've always been able to see when I look into people's eyes is there's more to what I'm looking at than can this person see me right now through them, you know. So I think that I can tell it just by looking into someone's eyes whether I want to know them for the rest of my life in that moment. And that's not to sound too judgmental, but I've just always had that heart connection to what my eye sees.
Right.
I'm pretty connected to my eye, and the more you listen to your messages, the more they'll come, and the less you listen, the less they'll come. And
exactly, it's a muscle, you know. Use it or lose it. Well, in a sense, yeah. It's a muscle.
Yeah.
Like, the more you trust your intuition, the stronger your intuition gets, you know, and the more on point it is, in a sense.
Absolutely.
But yeah, you know, that is a true science, you know, like the fact that you truly can decipher or decide if you can get along with this person, or if this person is right to be in your life, just from the first encounter. Because, you know, it's also like when you encounter someone, your guys' energy fields or magnetic fields or heart fields or whatever you want to call it, they also interact in a sense, you know. And it's like, and there if it's harmonious, then you feel a connection, you know, but if it's not, then you feel like there's something wrong, and that's also intuition. But it's like you should always listen, you know, and your intuition will never stray you wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Like, it's like when you open a door and you don't know who's on the other side of that door, but there's 10, like, just figuratively set out a scenario. There's 10 people on the other side of that door. You open that door, instantly, you know the energy vibration rate of everyone in that room straight away. You know who you want to be curled up with by 10 o'clock talking about this with, you know whose energy you feel like.
Right.
And
yeah.
I know when I walk in the room, like, this guy's going to cause some troubles for me, and usually I get it. I nail it. And I really find it really important to express these faculties of ourselves, because, yeah, like you say, like, it's not just as a muscle itself, but as a applied science of metaphysics. The more you use your thought, the more your thought will expand. And where's your thought? You can't physically see it. You can't prove that in a lab. But yeah, just talking about like that feeling of opening the door, and we know the field of people's energy vibrations, and you still have people that say, I don't believe in any of that stuff. I just go to nasa.government. Non-truth. And yeah, like, it's all about feeling for me, and it's what we do with those feelings that take us on our path with everything. Do I feel like going to this job today? Fuck no. Then I'm not going to go. That's my soul speaking. I'll always listen to that message. And yeah, but you can't prove it in a lab. You can't prove these feelings of energy flow. You can't prove it in a lab. And that's not the science that I would like to prosper from, because the way that the Western field of science accredits things, if I walk into a laboratory right now and they chop me up, it's up to them whether they say I'm a human or not. It's all by classification, when that's not necessary for me. You know, it's just a paradox.
Yeah, you know, it's very interesting, because it has been, you know, scientifically proven that energy cannot be destroyed, but energy only transforms, you know? And in that saying, they're telling us that reincarnation is real. Like, I mean, I feel like that's the only thing that it can mean, you know? If energy doesn't die, it transforms, and that has to mean that we end up ourselves after this lifetime. We go elsewhere, you know, in the sense of, but you know, that's ultimately what reincarnation is. It means to be, in a sense, recycled, I guess you could say.
What goes up must come down.
Yeah, I just found that to be interesting.
Definitely. Yeah. Got a bit of a playground happening there. You gotta.
Well, you guys, I think our conversation, in a sense, has came to a natural end, just as the day has came to a natural end, I guess we can say, because it is really dark where I am. But yes, you know, it has been really nice talking to you, bro. Adam. Always likewise, a delight to build and connect with you. Yeah. But yes, you know, this has been the Alkalize to Realize talk show. If you guys want to check out any more of our shows, you can find us on YouTube at Alkalize to Realize talk shows, or we are also on Facebook by the Philosopher's Stone, or Activation of the Philosopher's Stone. But yes, thank you for watching, and like they say, namaste.